So as we tackle step 4 of security team training, we got to center on a whole bunch of stuff. What we first need to check out is that the entire security team needs to be on the same page regarding standard operating procedures of the church. This isn't just for security, this is for liability mitigation reasons. So read the security plan and really understands what it says. Now, the proclivity people have in building a security plan is it becomes so, it almost takes the feel of stereo instructions, and they can be too short so that you don't really provide direction, or way too long so that the plan's so big no one has any possibility of actually reading it and knowing it. So it needs to be just straight to the point enough so that people have direction, and not so specific that it's stereo instructions and they have no hope of recalling. So building your security plan that's functional and helpful and people can actually read and understand, right? So in step 4 of training your security team training, let's make sure everyone's read the security plan and has a copy of it. The next piece of this is our weapons test. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you, the folks that already shoot and carry, many of them are going to dramatically overestimate their firearm skills. I've been shooting for 30 years and I got a war chest filled with 285 guns and whatever, of like, great. I'm a professional firearms instructor, tactics firearms instructor. That's my full-time job. I moonlight doing this stuff, but that's my full-time job. And I'll go ahead and tell you, typically folks dramatically overestimate their abilities. As a shooter, as somebody who is an instructor of instructors, it is very scary for me to even think about having to take a shot in a crowded congregation. I'm thinking about, where does that bullet actually stop moving? Know your target, what's beyond it, in front of it, to the left and the right of it. And bullets can keep going through walls, and you're accountable for every single bullet until it stops. What if as you're taking a shot, someone pops up right in front of your muzzle, right? Or as you're engaging, someone else thinks you're the gunman and shoots you, right? So there's all kinds of things that can go horribly wrong. And a lot of folks that have been kind of had I've been shooting for 20, 30 years, shooting Coke bottles off my pappy's back porch kind of mentality. Yeah, that's good for bullseye marksmanship, but drawing quickly under stress and shooting in a compressed amount of time is completely different. You could spend 20 or 30 years shooting off your back porch, so to speak, and never actually spend a single day preparing for the type of gunfight that you're being called to do. So when it comes to firearms testing, I want a couple things. So one is I want folks to be able to pass the exact same qualification that your state law enforcement does. So for example, right now I'm in Georgia, and if I had a security team that wanted to carry firearms, I'd ask them to pass the exact same Georgia post qualification that our cops do. Or maybe you want to go to a federal qualification, whatever, but it's a standard that when a court looks at it, says, hey, they passed the exact same qualification that these cops did, right? It'd add a little bit of weight as well if you could get an actual active duty serving cop to administer the test, even if it's an unofficial capacity. Somebody who gives that test knows how to administer it, so that a lawyer doesn't play a nice little trick there. So let's make sure we have a standard to weapon qualification that's in line with the state. I'd also want to beef up something else, because something like a Georgia post qualification for cops has nothing to do with concealed carry, and folks are concealed carrying. So I'd add another little qualification of my own making. I had one real simple years ago where I just asked them to do Todd Green's FAST drill, and you can look that up, FAST, F-A-S-T, and it's real simple. Draw from concealment 2 shots at 7 yards and in an index card. And then you conduct an emergency reload, press out, and shoot 4 rounds into an 8-inch circle 4 times. And I think I wanted them to do it in 12 seconds or less with no misses. And that's real sweet standard right there. But what you'll find is a lot of folks who tout their own firearms renown and abilities won't be able to pass your qualifications. And that doesn't mean they're out. It just means, hey, as soon as you can pass these qualifications, you can carry, and that's good. And so it shouldn't be a shaming type thing, but it allows folks to be real about what their ability is. And we can provide coaching and help and bring folks on board, because people will overestimate their ability with firearms, and that's a problem. Next piece, so right now as we're dealing with security team training, we've talked about, hey, read the security plan. Next, weapons testing if you're going to do it. And if you have tasers instead, you have to provide some type of taser training or make them be certified in it as well. Would be a good idea. The next piece is judgmental shooting. I've seen folks that are really good with guns and they mark all of our ticks so far, but under stress, they just kind of lose it. I remember specifically having somebody who's a good shooter. I'd shot with them. They went through a judgmental shooting program and they made some horrible, scary decisions. And that freaked me out. And I felt like under stress, would this person do the right thing or would they do something potentially catastrophic? You can tackle judgmental shooting in a couple different ways. One, you can create scenario-based training so that you come up with some idea of like, hey, what are some things that could really go horribly on a Sunday morning in terms of violence? And then you stage it, have some role players, your security team members are doing this, and you take turns being the good guy and the bad guy and the innocent bystanders, and then you run a scenario and see how they perform under stress, and especially if they don't know what's coming. That's real good stuff. You can also get some type of video simulation. I have one of these. I'll provide links below if you guys are interested in checking this out, but it basically allows you to interact with a computer simulation to see what you would do under stress, and it's amazing. A good simulator can kind of suck you in, and you get stressed and a little fearful, and it can really pull you in. It can be a very, very good training tool so that we're not just testing firearms proficiency, we're trusting good judgment, which is more important to me than even the firearms stuff, is to have good judgment where you see fast and you think fast. Another really important piece that security team members really need to be trained on has to do with the local and state laws regarding justifiable use of force. When is it okay to brandish a weapon and shoot somebody? You have to be able to defend that in a court of law to make sure you're free from all liability. It was a clean shooting. All right, so what we just covered was the initial training for your security team under step 4. There's more to this. One, you have your initial training, but you also have ongoing training. So after somebody gets through all the stuff that I just listed, now it's time to be able to schedule annual, semi-annual, maybe some folks are really motivated and do training events a few times a year. And this is stress shoots where people set up courses of fire. Everybody can have fun, make it into a barbecue as well, but it's ongoing training regarding your weapon skills. You can also incorporate lots of force-on-force and scenario-based training, and not all of these are shoot. Remember, most of life is in no shoot. So it's a lot of de-escalation skills as well, and dealing with an upset parent or somebody who is struggling with custody issues with their kid, and mom dropped him off, but dad shows up and tries to steal the kid and does it real sneaky. That's a big security problem, right? So anyway, to be able to go through ongoing training, things like that. Some other fun stuff that you can incorporate is martial arts training, edged weapons stuff, disarms. Have fun with it, but make sure ongoing training is something that's built into your plan. Initial training, ongoing training, and now individual training. The individual understands that in keeping with their professional qualifications for being on the security team, they shouldn't just wait for all the training events to come down. They need to be able to personally keep up their fundamentals of fire. I don't want to have to coach fundamentals of fire in my team training events because, hey, proper grip, stance, platform, how to pull a trigger, stop anticipating the shot. That's stuff that can be done at an individual level so we can make the best of stress fires and run and gun type stuff and quick thinking, quick seeing type stuff for your team training stuff. So your individual training stuff should be put on the individual and should highly be encouraged. Folks need to be shooting and engaging in martial arts and keeping themselves physically fit, right, as part of their individual training. All right, the last thing I wanted to talk about with security training has to do with your non-security team staff. Anyone on staff at your church that isn't necessarily in a security capacity, but hospitality team, worship team, I would like them to understand the overall plan for security. Don't sit them down and bore them to death on the stuff that they are not going to really care about. It isn't in their wheelhouse. That's not how they tick, but just give them the most important stuff that has something to do with them. So ensure that everyone in the church, especially on staff, is on the same page. That's a good thing. What we want to do is create, at least in some semblance, a culture of security. More eyes knowing what to look for means you're a lot safer with a lot more early warning. And remember, it's not really about fast shooting, it's about fast seeing and fast thinking so that we can stop a problem before it actually starts. Next is I would want our non-security staff to have some idea of criminal psychology, knowing what to look for. So for instance, they would know the grooming practices that a pedophile would embark in. They understand the socially awkward, withdrawn threat indicators of the juvenile who may snap and go ballistic on folks, shooting them up in some type of active killer scenario. They also know what to look for in terms of anomalies regarding situational awareness. It's summertime, and this guy just came in with his head down and a hoodie all the way over, and he skirted around the walls toward the side of the sanctuary. And you thought, that's weird. I'm like, yeah, that is weird. He's got a big bulge under his jacket. And you know, we can a lot of times are so interested in greeting people and hanging out and doing our thing that we're not really in that frame of mind. And that's good for most people, but the anomalies like that should jump out so that they would be able to say, you know what? I didn't really have a good feeling about that. Let me just go ahead and make sure the security team member that is right there is tracking that. And that's a real good thing. A final thing has to do with their individual security, as really if they have a security problem individually and they come to church, now they can potentially bring that in. So whether it's a stalker or someone else, you never know. I would encourage all non-security team staff, especially the ladies, to read a book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. It's one of the only security books that I really pressed my wife to read. She read it and man, it changed a lot. But it has to do with kind of trusting your gut and what to look for. How do you know who the bad guys are before the bad guys present themselves? So really important. Guys, this was step 4 regarding training. Now let's check out step 5.